What's up, guys? I wanted to get on briefly to talk about a topic that I don't hear touched on all that often in Christian circles or online discussions, but I do see it a lot in the world, and that topic is therapy. I have had a lot of it in my life, and I just want to kind of stress how important it is to seek out a Christian counselor. Not only have I been a patient, for years throughout my life, I've also worked in the field. My degree's in social work and drug and alcohol counseling. And then the next level degree that I'm working on is social and behavioral sciences. So I feel like I'm a little qualified, at least, to speak on this, right? So one of my greatest concerns, looking back through all of the years of counseling that I have had, is the advice that worldly counselors will give you. My first experience, from what I can remember anyways, I was about 15 years old and I had a full meltdown, mental health crisis. Things had been going on for a while, but I was really good at hiding it. And I had been into, can't say it online. Like I said, I kept it a secret. And one time it was quick and it ended up way worse than I expected it to be. And I had to go show my mom because I was pretty convinced that I needed to seek medical help, like, butterfly stitches or something of the sort, And when I showed her, she lost it, like most parents would. I don't blame her. She didn't know how to handle it, and she was a woman of God. But instead of sitting me down and talking to me about, Jesus the healer, she took me into the emergency room and, coerced me into signing myself into inpatient treatment. So why am I telling you all of this? This is the one and only time this has ever happened in my life. And guys, I have healed. I've come so far. Like I said, I was 15 years old back then, and I had some issues when I was a kid. I'm not that person anymore. So I go through this inpatient thing for like a week or whatever. And man, the whole time I was there, I was just thinking I do not belong here. It was like the first real encounter that I had with people that had serious mental health issues. Not that mine weren't serious, but not like I'm not schizophrenic or I don't even know what some were. I know my roommate was schizophrenic, and that scared the crap out of me. Like the things that she would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, seeing things, and I was just like, wow, my mom, you need to get me out of here. I don't belong here, So once I'm released, they put me into outpatient therapy or whatever, and the suggestions that these worldly therapists gave me for when I felt the urge to do that was to either wear a rubber band around my wrist, and when I felt that urge, just to kind of keep snapping it on my wrist. And I don't know if you've ever snapped a rubber band against your wrist, but man, is it painful. It's not enjoyable. Not that what I was doing was, but I mean, I don't know, man, it's just annoying to me. That never worked. They told me to hold an ice cube in my hand and let it melt. And I don't know if anyone's done that, but man, does that burn. It does not. It's a crazy sensation, And lastly, they told me to get a phone book and just, when I felt all that aggression up, is to grab a phone book and just start ripping it apart, right? And that's how long ago this was, guys. It was back when we had phone books, but, there's only so many phone books in a household. How many times could I actually do that to feel better? So let's just pause for a minute and absorb what I just said, right? Their solutions to what I was doing was to harm in a more socially acceptable way. You know what I mean? It's still okay to go ahead and sting or hold an ice cube and burn as long as you aren't, doing that. How crazy is that? What kind of advice is that? And I actually tried these things and listened to it and believed it and got nowhere with it, So like I said, I was around 15 at this time. By the time I was 17, I had moved out of my parents' house and tattoos started. I already started getting piercings. They let me when I was 15, pierce my eyebrow and a few things. But by the time I was 17 and moved out, tattoos were just and I just kind of replaced the desire to do that to myself. And guys, I'm not one of those people who think tattoos are a sin, especially if it was, before you got saved. I think that every person should judge it for themselves, go with your own convictions. There's no solid biblical proof, and people try to say that there is not. to say that it is sinful. So I would say pray about it, take it to God, and go with your own convictions. Maybe bounce it off some people at your church or your pastor or your Christian counselor and see what they might have to say about it. But I don't think that they're a sin. However, for me, back then it was, because it wasn't about getting some beautiful, memorable piece on, work of art on my body. It was about the sensation of, that tattoo gun on my skin. And I just kind of went crazy with it, and then my addiction kind of took off, and, I'm surprised that it took me as long as it did to resort to the most extreme form of using, because I always liked that sensation. For whatever reason, guys, I always felt like I needed punished. I felt like dirty, or like I did something wrong, and I think a lot of that ties back to the CSA from my childhood, and a lot of what I learned in like catechism, CCD, and whatnot. I felt like everything that went wrong in my life was God punishing me, because that's like the God that I was taught of when I was young, and which is horrible, by the way. I didn't learn about the God of the Bible, the real Jesus, until I was in my like early 20s or whatever. So for whatever reason, guys, I just always felt like I deserved to be punished, and I wasn't big on hurting other people, like emotionally. Like I've said before, I fight a lot when I was young. But emotionally, if it was somebody that I cared about, or a family member or anything of the sort, like I'd totally withdraw. I don't believe in hurting their feelings. I would never swing on my sister at times when she swung on me. That was just never who I wanted to be. Loyalty, I've said numerous times, I am loyal to a fault. Like when I care about somebody, I go above and beyond, and I treat them probably better than I treat myself sometimes. Not so much today. I'll go out of my way for people, but I'm not going to put anybody above my own mental health or my own sanity or peace or whatever, unless the Lord's telling me to do it, which I don't think that he would really do that. But anyways, because I would withdraw myself from these situations, like if an argument gets heated or something, I was the type to get in my car and go for a drive, and I never really felt comfortable. I didn't know how to express my emotions. I was very much a people pleaser when I was young, especially within my family and everything. I didn't know how to speak up for myself back then. So a lot of that pent up aggression and resentment, I took out on myself. That's where that came from. And so when I said the phone book thing worked, it kind of did, because it just gets out that aggression, right? But it wasn't a long-term solution. It wasn't a lasting solution. It was whack advice. I don't know what else to say. So fast forward a little bit, like I was engaged by the time I was probably like 18, because I was a teen mom. There are some Christians out there who are just going to think the worst of me because of my story and my testimony. But guys, I don't even care. Like, I'm not here to please them. I'm here to please the Lord, and I'm here to share with others my experience, strength, and hope. So anyways, I was also a teen mom, and I was engaged to my high school sweetheart by the time I was like 18 years old, 17 or 18. We moved in together when I first moved out of the house. And when we were having issues, again, I was in therapy, and I went and talked to my therapist, and, I brought that up a lot. And, this has happened to me several times in my life when I was in relationships, committed ones. Their solution was always to leave the other person. And in this situation, he was a great guy. To this day, I have nothing but respect for him. We have a kid together, obviously. She's grown, but I still have the utmost respect for him. He was a great guy. I was the moron back then, And still, they're telling me, like, do what makes you happy. You deserve better, blah, 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 Never met this guy, ever had a session with him or anything, but yet they're telling me that I'm, should do what makes me happy and that I deserve better. How can you even judge that when you've never even met the guy? You're just going off of what me, who is in therapy because I have issues, is telling you, It's just bizarre to me when I'm thinking back. And I hope nothing I say is offending anybody who might be in therapy, or any therapist or anything of the sort. Like, this is just my experience, guys. That's all I can share. And I'm just giving you guys a few examples of, the things that they had tried to teach me. I remember early in recovery, fast forward a few years, early in recovery, I was having some issues with my mom because my daughter reached the age that I was when, that CSA happened to me. And it stirred up some like serious emotions inside of me because I'm like, how could you not protect? Like if somebody did that to her, that's it. Like I couldn't hold back from that, today I would hope that I could forgive somebody, but I can't even sit here and tell you guys that today I wouldn't have the same reaction, because that is a child, and it is my duty to protect them. That is my child. And I just have zero tolerance for any kind of perversion like that. You know, guys, I love my mom. I am not speaking ill of her at all. You know, she went through stuff in her life too, and she handled it the best that she knew how. And so I was dealing with all of these emotions that were resurfacing at the time, right? I'm talking to my therapist about it. My therapist's solution at that time was, now these are all different therapists, mind you, but her solution at that time was to put distance in between me and my mom. And my mom was everything to me. Like like I said, I was a people pleaser. It was a very codependent relationship. But, you know, I caved and did whatever she asked me to do most of the time. But she was very loving. She was always there for me. And we were always very close, you know. And they told me to put distance between us. And I actually followed their advice for once, because I just wanted to stop hurting. And when you get to recovery, you know, they tell you that you have to take suggestions or you're going to relapse. And guys, I had relapsed so many times before I finally got it right. And so I listened, and I went to the recovery house in a city, which was an hour away from my mom. And let me just put it this way. Things never got back to what they once were with us. There was always a bit of distance between us from that point on. When my mom eventually got sick, there was still this kind of bit of a wedge between us. We still talked, and we were still, you know, on okay terms. We just weren't as close as we once were. And I have so much regret for that, guys. Because if there hadn't been, I probably would have moved back home much sooner to help take care of her, you know, when she passed away. It's just something that I got to deal with. I listened to the wrong advice, like I said. So I could keep going on and telling you guys about situations and advice that I got that was just crappy, in my opinion. But, you know, these are enough examples that you can kind of see what I'm getting at. Not to mention, gradually over the years, you know, these type of circles started to become more and more dependent upon medication to help solve your problems than ever before. As I understand, like, nowadays, that's the go-to. You know, there is no trying to solve it other ways first. It's just, as soon as there's an issue, boom, you got a diagnosis and you got a medication to go along with it. And I have never had good experiences with those. That's just me personally. I don't like those things. I never have. They didn't just numb the bad feelings, they also numbed the good. And I feel like it definitely hindered my spiritual growth along the way. It's been many years since I've taken anything like that, but, you know, that's just another thing that I've noticed. So, all of that being said, this is why I want to encourage people to go to your pastor or a Christian counselor, and make sure that you are getting sound biblical advice from people. Make sure that they are pointing you back to Christ. You know, I wish to God that my mom would have sat me down, and I don't blame her for this. Like I said, she did the best she could. That she would have sat me down and told me about how I could have a new identity, like taught me to see myself through Christ's eyes. I wish she would have done that back then. I don't know that I would have been willing to listen and accept that. You know, I was pretty hard-headed, but at least it would have planted that seed, you know. But at the same time, because I waited so long to tell her, you know, she was just kind of like, didn't know what to do and was freaking out a little bit. So she took me to people who, you know, she thought were professionals that would know how to handle it better than she could, you know. And I can't go back and change any of that. But I know that if one of my kids ever did that, you know, that would be my solution these days, is to go to the Bible. The Bible says that God's grace is sufficient, that his strength is made perfect in our weaknesses. It tells us to fear not numerous times, cast your cares upon him. It says that he's close to the brokenhearted. Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. You know, there's numerous scriptures that I could reference right now that point to the fact that he is a healer, he is a counselor, he is a best friend. He is what we need in those times of trouble. You don't need some crazy advice from the world that's just going to tell you a more socially acceptable way. Just put a Band-Aid on it, you know, let's just put a Band-Aid on it. So I want to apologize as well if this lighting keeps going in and out. I'm like sitting in front of a window, but I also have a light right here. And like when the sun, it's just really windy and weird and cloudy outside right now. So the sun comes and goes and it's just like really messing with the lighting on this video. But this is where I decided to record, and I'm not going to redo this. So, you know, it is what it is. We'll have to deal with it. I will talk to you guys again soon. God bless all of you, and be careful whose advice you're taking, especially when it comes to therapy. You know, I don't blame the individual therapist. It's a system as a whole and the type of things that you're taught in school. Like I said, I also have a degree in these areas, and I'm familiar with all the theories that they base their little solutions on and whatnot. And it is fascinating, and there is some good stuff that comes along with it. But the way that it's been being taught, I don't know. Nobody and nothing is equipped to handle your problems more than our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's what I will say. And again, plenty of scriptures will be linked in the description box below. So if you want to do a little mini Bible study on encouraging scriptures to help you through those difficult times with emotions and anxiety and depression and whatnot, then feel free. God bless, guys.